In this educational video for Adhesive, the focus will be on the adhesive. It can be difficult to understand the unique properties of an Adhesive adhesive when wrapping because the true story is hidden from view. This video will show you what is happening on the back side of the film so you can get the best results in terms of avoiding adhesive lines and getting long-term hold. The adhesive has a low initial tack, which allows it to slide easily across the surface. Note that when the film is squeegeed to the surface, it still can be picked up easily. Therefore, it's important to note that the adhesive isn't pressure activated, it's heat activated. So after making a squeegee stroke and adding heat to the same area, it will now make the Adhesive film stick to the surface securely during the install. And what is very important to note is that since an Adhesive film is heat activated, working in a warm workspace or warming the film before sliding it on the surface can cause it to tack too quickly. Here's a good example. On this hood install, the liner was released, but the hood was still warm from driving. So as the installers work the film onto the surface, you can see that it tacks to the hood too quickly, which causes large bubbles. The Adhesive film can still be worked onto the hood, but now the installers must pick it up and exert a lot of energy to stretch it out, which could have been avoided if the temperature of the workspace or hood was lower. Yet, Adhesive understands that the workspace temperatures or the vehicle can be above 75 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's recommended to use a low-tack solution on the surface. This is a mix of 20 milliliters distilled water, 10 milliliters baby shampoo, and 5 milliliters IPA. Spray an even light mist on the surface and let it dry completely, which will be quickly due to the isopropyl alcohol. Then, with a microfiber towel, degrease all the edges or any recessed areas, and keep in mind that this low-tack solution is particularly effective on large horizontal sections like hoods and roofs, even if the workspace is at a good temperature. And now you can see how, with the low-tack solution dried evenly on the surface, the liner can be fully released and the panel easily repositioned into place. Now we move on to the squeegeeing process, and here's an example of how not to do it, which is in a random pattern. And you can clearly see that by working with no order, gaps are made on the surface which can cause bubbles or adhesive lines. An Adhesive film should instead be applied to the surface in firm, overlapping squeegee strokes. You can clearly see this creates even adhesion on the surface, which results in high quality. Long strokes should be made on flat sections, and on the sides, short overlapping strokes for 100% coverage. Now we move on to an example that shows how using an application glove too much can have a negative result. The application glove puts pressure on the face of the film, and you can see, due to a combination of the shape and softness of the hand, the adhesive on the Adhesive film isn't fully applied to the surface. This leads to bubbles and/or adhesive lines, which can lower quality. Yes, an Adhesive film does have an air egress feature, which is now shown as the bubbles are pushed out, and eventually the surface will be 100% covered, but this takes time and it opens the door to missing these areas, so using a squeegee primarily is the best choice for the installer. Note that an Adhesive film should not be rolled up too tight, especially with the cap sheet on, as this can cause the liner to lift from the film. And on this piece you can see how the liner was lifted about a half an inch from side to side. It doesn't look like it'll be a problem if you don't know about this, but as you can see, as the film is squeegeed onto the surface, the panel installs like normal, but the area where the liner lifted can be seen while the rest looks 100% uniform. This area where the liner was released will cause adhesive lines on the surface, so be sure to avoid this when prepping the panels. It is very important to avoid holding the film high off the surface when squeegeeing. The Adhesive film from this side looks like it applies fine, but here's the real story. The same panel is being applied in the exact same way, with the film being held high off the surface. Because of the angle of the film and squeegeeing, you can see that this creates extra pressure on specific lines for each stroke. This will cause adhesive lines, which can often be seen through the face of the film, which obviously lowers quality. The key is to keep the film low to the surface when squeegeeing, and you'll see this in other educational videos of this Adhesive series. Next up is how to relax the Adhesive film when it bunches up without getting adhesive lines. This area needs to be picked back up in order to even the tension out. Once it's picked back up, the film is heated to soften it, and while it's still warm, it's pulled at a very high angle to the edge. In doing it this way, you can see that it causes the film to have adhesive lines from where it was pulled hard, and it shows the air-egress pattern on the adhesive. This lowers quality and is a sign that there's too much tension in the film. And a good way to see this is by flipping the panel up and looking at the adhesive. Instead of looking even and uniform, you can clearly see the adhesive line and distortion on the air-egress pattern. Now you'll see the correct way to even out the tension. The same piece is picked back up, heat is added to trigger the memory of the film, with the film still slightly warm. The film is then held with the thumbs on the underside and the fingers spread wide on top. It's then gently pulled to the edge, low and flat, and squeegeed onto the surface. This creates a perfect paint-like finish with no tension in the film, which means it'll look good and hold perfectly on the edge for the long term. Earlier, it was mentioned that a Nesotec film is heat activated. What is also important to know is that when it's stretched onto a compound curve like bumpers, mirrors, and door handles, heat needs to be applied immediately once it's on the surface. Otherwise, the film may lift off the surface, and the section has to be reinstalled. This costs time. To save time, installers need to get in the habit of adding heat to a compound curve as soon as it's been applied. This will activate the adhesive and cause it to hold strongly without lifting. To further this point, when any section on the vehicle has been fully completed, like this front door, it is very important to heat the entire panel up to 130 degrees Fahrenheit in order to fully activate the adhesive. This is critical to ensure a proper hold on the surface, and it only takes a few minutes to do. A bonus of doing this is the heat can double check for any bubbles and self-heal any minor scratches on the surface caused by the squeegee. And now you have a good understanding of the unique properties of an Nesotec supergloss wrapping film, which will help lead to a superior paint-like finish that holds strong for the long term.